Okay. Well, welcome to Emotionally Unavailable. Um, I'm really excited for this conversation. I was rereading stuff this morning to orient myself because I actually haven't had a recording in a while. And so I was like, who am I talking to today? So you have a really interesting story, but I wondered if we could start like way back. Like where are you from? That kind of thing. However you wanna tell, I don't wanna, like, be pulling stuff out that you don't wanna talk about, but, what if we could start with a little backstory?
Sure, I'm happy to. Thanks for having me on. I'll just give you the bare bones, but anything you want to ask, feel free. Um, I grew up outside of Boston in Massachusetts,
Oh, okay.
and all the way through grade school and then high school. Then I moved out to Southern California for undergrad. After undergrad, I did a gap year where I actually worked on a communal farm in Israel for a year,
Wow.
moved back to Southern California and worked as a uh, photographer in a commercial portrait studio in a mall. Then went off to grad school in San Diego. Ended up getting my MA and then my PhD in psychological anthropology there. And then was between different positions, first in Southern California and then in Arkansas, faculty member for about 20 years. And partway through, while I was on a research trip in Brazil, realized that I was staying with a very good friend of mine who let me use a small back bedroom. And that even though the bedroom was smaller than the closet of my house in the master suite, I felt more at home there. And I said, what the heck is that about? And I realized it had to do with quality of relationships and that I was not going to have what I wanted as long as I stayed in academia, where it was all about external measures of success. So then started to pivot away from academia, and that was a multi-year process, and ended up going more into life coaching. And along the way, had some major injuries I had to overcome that really made me question a lot of different things
Mhm.
about where does our value come from and what defines us as human beings, and
Yes.
ended up being a nomad, like traveling a lot for about 4 years and getting back involved with some partner dancing that I really am involved in. It's a form called Brazilian Zouk. And recently ended up relocating in southern Portugal in Lagos in the Algarve. And since we set this up, as of this coming Monday, I'm actually the new owner of a local dance and movement studio.
Yes, that's so exciting. So, okay, couple questions. Just to clarify for myself. One, are you in a partnership romantically with anyone right now?
I am not at the moment.
Okay, so you've done a lot of this solo. Well, I mean, I'll say I know you have friends and support and whatever, but that's to me it's a little different doing that stuff just with like some love around you than like actual someone else contributing financially, emotionally, spiritually. So that's the only reason I'm asking. Okay. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit. Um how are you an only child or like how many siblings do you have?
Gotcha. So I have a full sister who's 21 months younger than me.
Oh.
So we grew up together. And then I have a half sister who's about 15 years younger than me and a half brother who's 17, 18 years younger. So I never grew up with them. But,
Yeah.
you know,
Do you have a relationship with them now?
yes. I haven't spoken directly. I'm not super close with my siblings. Um, I think I moved off to college, while they were still growing up, and everyone else was in the Northeast. I was the loner who was out in California,
Yeah.
and then I'm the one who's been traveling and
Oh,
all of
yeah.
that. But we get along fine. And interestingly, my half brother, even though we're the furthest apart in age and spent the least time overlapping, at this point when we get together, we're actually the most similar as far as personality and like values.
Right. That's so funny. I have 2 younger half sisters, and, they're 8 and 10 years younger than me, and our evolution of relationship as adults. I think that they would have stayed much closer to me, but I put the distance between us, which is something that I've only kind of figured out, like, in the last truly in the last year. Turns out it was just the way I protected myself. But, are you close with the youngest, like, the 21-month difference sister?
No, my sister and I mean, we love each other clearly, and I don't think we don't get along. But I think the trajectories of our lives were just very different. And uh, no, we're not particularly close.
Yeah.
And I hope she doesn't get hurt if she hears that, but I think that's the reality.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think loving each other is different than, like, talking to each other and sharing emotionally, spiritually, on a regular basis.
Hmm.
And I also think it's easy to call yourself close to your siblings when you're not, just because you love each other and you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I think that's actually a very common sibling dynamic. But I wonder, with where you're from, listen, I know shit about that area. I know the South and I know the Midwest. That's what I know. But after listening to Noah Khan, or however the hell you say his last name, I've been learning about that area of the country. But I'm wondering, with the way you view life, uh, do you feel misunderstood? Like, have you been supported emotionally by your family in these ventures? Or has it felt very, my family's not really here for this and I've created a chosen family?
That's an interesting and tricky question. I don't think I'm not supported.
Okay.
I think everyone, again, I moved off to California for undergrad, like, 3,000 miles away from the family, right before I turned 18. So I think the family's just used to my being that person in the family and the one who does all the traveling.
Yeah.
Uh, I think the one place where it stings a little is when I go and stay with my dad and stepmom, who are located in Southern Florida now. Uh, there's a portrait of the family that has, all the siblings and the spouses of siblings other than me. And it's because I wasn't in the country at the time. So I can't
Yeah.
blame them.
Yeah.
But there's this big frame that says family and it's all of them. And there's no pictures of me there. And
Yeah.
it's right outside the room I stay in.
Oh,
Uh,
that would be painful.
it stings a little. I can't blame anyone. And I think my father absolutely supports what I do. And I really give him all the credit in the world. The last conversation we had, he's dealing with Parkinson's.
Ah,
And, one of the things he told me was, if things really deteriorate, while he would love to see me, he doesn't have any expectation. And like, if it's going to disrupt what I'm building or trying to get my residency, or if it's a real obstacle in any way, that he has no expectation and, not to he wouldn't want it to disrupt things. So in that sense, I feel very supported.
yeah.
Mm, I think where there was a bigger challenge, I hadn't fully put everything in motion yet, but my mother passed very early in 22,
Mhm.
and she had had brain damage from a car accident when I was just turning 18,
Oh gosh.
and that was, to her, I don't think she meant ill, but it was very much about her and the impact it was gonna have on her, and that it was gonna be harder for her to see me, and, in some ways, it's very fortuitous that she passed before this phase of my life, really started to unfold in full.
Yeah. So were you there?
I was in town, yes.
Yeah.
I things went downhill much faster, like, from the time that I realized she was still in the hospital, and it wasn't just, like, a few days until she passed was just a matter of weeks, but I did manage to get up to the Boston area, and, for 1 week while she was the night I got up, the next day, we switched her to in-hospital hospice.
Mhm.
It was already at that stage,
Mhm.
and then 1 week later, we managed to move her out of the hospital to an actual hospice location, where she, never woke up that last week.
Wow. Did you feel I mean, your sister went through that with you, right?
Yes, she arrived, I want to say 2 days after I got up there. Because the night I arrived back in the Boston area, I got a call from the hospital that at the time there was some bleeding and they weren't even sure if she was going to make it through the night. So I
Oh,
called my sister,
yeah.
who was visiting my dad at the time, and I'm like, I know you're visiting. I know I told you I wasn't going to interrupt your visit unless necessary, but luckily my mother stabilized and so was still conscious when my sister got up a couple of days later, and we did get to interact some with her before she passed.
Okay. But I'm just getting the sense that as the oldest, you've kind of been the front runner and really probably had to do so much alone or by yourself. I mean, which is usually the plight of the oldest because no one knows what the hell they're doing and you take all the brunt of all the unreasonable expectations. So not even surprised that you ended up in academia, really. Um so I'm just curious about when you say academia, kind of the picture of everything you weren't going to have. I mean, that's a very simple way of saying it, but you had said something about I don't want to misquote you, but something about the external validation. Will you unpack that a little bit for me? Because I have had very similar conversations around that from my time working in education, not necessarily like, big time education, but
Mhm.
what did that mean for you?
Yeah, what I realized when I was at my friend's place in Brazil is that all of my really good friends in Brazil, they might have known what I did professionally, but they didn't actually care. Like they were proud of me or proud for me,
Yeah.
but they loved me, the person. And that, especially with the direction that academia had been shifting over the years I'd been involved, it was all about these external performance measures. So, all about your latest publications and if you had any grants and what were your latest teaching evaluations and what were your professional leadership positions. And
Mm.
even the teaching evaluations were like the university at the administrative level was starting to include things like how useful is this class to your future career?
Ew.
And to me, it's like, A, maybe an 18-year-old isn't qualified to know that. Maybe they don't even know what
Yeah.
their career is.
Yeah.
And maybe not every class has to be about your career. Maybe an education is about just learning to think in different ways and be aware of different possibilities.
For
And so
sure.
when my value as a person within the system was all about those external measures, that's what
Mm.
told me it wasn't right for me to stay anymore.
No, I resonate with that so much because I have always, not always, but since I worked in education, I did a little 7-year stint. My background was as a hospice social worker and did that for a long time. And even when I moved to education, I did part-time bereavement work till just this last October. But I was all, I just want to be this kind of teacher and da, 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 da. I just had some real rose-colored glasses about who I could show up as in that space and learned very quickly that was stupid. So, what I did learn though is that education, and I don't know about higher learning, but for like, high school and below, education kind of calls to the codependent. And we all have this little bit of a hero complex. And then as I got into that, the standards that were set were unreasonable and nobody could meet the expectation. But I also, for the first time in my life, was not receiving the validation that I required to function because I had no way of internally validating myself. All of my I mean, like I'm the first. I'm the first to go to college in my family. I mean, on my mom's side, I always make that declaration because I do know I had a cousin graduating on my dad's side. Blah, blah, blah. I wasn't raised with them. I don't count it. Anyway, so like I'm only one of a few to graduate high school from my point, like, whenever I graduated, only a few had graduated before me, and then I'm the first to go to college, think I'm the only to get a master's, the only to have, like, a real career, for a long time. Others have come after me, but I was, like, the first. So, I got a lot of esteem from that because I had really been motivated from this place of spite for a really long time, to prove other people wrong. There was never about, like, I feel so stupid for saying this, but I one of my favorite basketball players just said this the other day, and I was like, "Damn, that's so good." But he said, "No, I don't spend my time proving people wrong. I like to prove like myself and my support system right. The people who see me and know me and love me, like I'm proving us right." And that was a shift for me too. And so I used to, because I had a very toxic family system. So I was all like, I got to prove y'all wrong. I got to prove y'all wrong, and just improve the system wrong. I was a part of a kinship foster care placement in childhood. So like I was presented with a lot of statistics about what girls like me turn out to be. And I was like, hell no. But then I get an education and, oh my god, you can't do anything right. Like, literally, there's nothing you can do right. I can certainly remember my time as a grad student, especially in the School of Social Work, seeing the world you're talking about. I definitely could not be me, but I can see what the standards for that level of education are. Very different, obviously, but I can also understand how you get there. And it's like, my measure of success is this, just like my measure of success as a teacher is this fifth grader who does not sleep, who does not get good nutrition, is literally being neglected at home. How they're performing on this test is how I'm measured. Are you joking? And you're so right. Education, higher learning should never be about how it ties to your career. Like, there should be more opportunities to take classes that don't have anything to do with your major without it being a waste, you know? So, yes, I can certainly understand that. So, what I'm also hearing as a positive, though, is because of your interest in other cultures and rituals and traditions, that you really had built this little support system that saw you and loved you and supported you just because you're a human and because they felt like you were a good human.
Yeah, I think a part of why I ended up in the field of cultural anthropology, and I think it's true for most people who do, is you don't feel like a full insider somewhere. If you feel like an insider, why would it be interesting to you? What are the differences with other things?
That's
And
such a good point.
so I I I mean, I glossed over it, but I definitely grew up in a very dysfunctional family, with a lot of emotional abuse and minimally directed at me, but some physical in the vicinity,
Yeah.
and definitely some physical altercations and real fights over religion
Mm,
between my parents, which then my sister and I became proxies for.
yeah.
And it's part of why I moved away to California for undergrad. I was like, that's as far as away as I can get within the continental US.
Yeah.
And there's very few direct flights, and it's not the same time zone. Like, I want to go far. And I think it's fine to intellectually know that people did the best they could.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean that it was actually okay.
Right. The impact
And
matters, whether the intent was to impact you in that way or not. That's my favorite. When somebody can hold both of those perspectives at the same time and think, I mean, shit, I'm welcome for anyone to say fuck them too. Like, if that's where you're at on your journey, I was certainly held a lot of the fuck yous in me for a long time. But I can't stand when people stop, full stop at they did the best they could. Mhm.
mhm.
Okay, I agree with you, and what? They fucked you up. Why are you skipping over that?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what you're speaking to is that whole tendency towards toxic positivity of,
Yep.
everything happens for a reason. What's the silver lining?
Mhm.
It's like, as you said, I mean, bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
there's more to life than that.
Yes.
And there's a full texture to it, including stuff that really sucks. And so
Yes.
while I did go on to be very successful academically, people didn't think I was going to graduate high school in 4 years. I was diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder
Mm.
right as it was being defined. It was the beginning of my junior year, and there weren't the understandings of it now. So at the time, they were treating it with Xanax, which is an anti anxiety
Shut
medication.
the fuck up.
Um,
Are you serious?
and
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yep,
didn't know that they
yep.
ever treated that with Xanax. Oh my god.
Back around, I think that's around 90. No, it's before that. It's 88, something like that. 89. Yeah. Um,
That's crazy.
and living in the Northeast, like it's also part of why I went to first undergrad and then grad school in Southern California. It's like
Mhm.
I needed a sunnier environment because even so I did turn things around academically. Then, especially my senior year, once we moved on to some antidepressants that mattered. But even in sunnier climates, like there's still a seasonal hit
Yes.
I take when I'm in environments that it's overcast too much. It's part of why I'm in southern Portugal now, is because I
Mhm.
needed to settle in a sunnier climate. And definitely growing up in a very dysfunctional family, like I definitely had anger issues as a boy and then as a young man.
Mhm.
And it was not an easy go of it. And people weren't sure what I was going to make of myself academically. And there was some of that, needing to prove myself when I went off to college, saying now
Yeah.
that I'm out of that environment, now that I'm in a better climate. And it's interesting because when my parents came out for my graduation from college, I both had to have them stay very far from each other. Like, I think they'd be civil if they saw each other in public there,
Right.
but like, you don't want them staying in close vicinity to each other. Um, and one came a couple of days early to visit and then left, and one came on time and then stayed a couple of days late. Like, I couldn't overlap visiting.
Mm.
And I did actually have some words with both of them at the time saying, even at the same time as you all said, just do my best, some of the stories growing up and some of the expectations, I sort of did 4 years of college and only at the end realized I was so busy essentially establishing resume fodder, proving that I was good enough and could do it, that I didn't actually have a college experience. Um, and if I think back like freshman year, everyone else, Friday night, Saturday, they're going out and going to parties and socializing. I'm sitting in the dorm trying to prove I actually am capable.
Yeah. To yourself even, I'm sure, which just
Oh, yeah,
continued to put
absolutely.
you in the other category. Like, how much of your life have you spent as an other?
In some ways, I think all of it. But I also want to be very clear. I think it's the same thing we were talking about before. It's not other and only other, but it's never only insider either. Even
Mhm.
in places where I feel insider, I'm aware of also being other. And both are
Right.
true at the same time.
Right. I totally get that. Are you an Aquarius? That seems to be so
No, I'm not.
common with Aquarius. Um, wow. So then you mentioned kind of some of the internal work that you did to overcome the near paralysis. Am I saying that correct? How did you word this? You almost couldn't move?
Mm. Oh, the physical injury you're talking about.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay.
I was like, I'm
Yeah.
not making that up.
So,
Am I shit?
no, not at all. The first half of 2019 is when I was in Brazil and sort of had the realization that I wanted to pivot away from academia. Came back to the US that summer. And then it was the very end of October of 2019 that I was coming back to Arkansas from an academic conference in San Diego, and I could tell that my hip and my back were just feeling tight, and like it was uncomfortable. And driving home from the airport, it was like, oh, I've got to go to the chiropractor tomorrow. And that next morning, when I went to get out of bed, the minute my foot touched the ground, it was like this lightning bolt just shot through my right side. Um,
That
and it
sounds
was just this
awful.
agony like I have not felt before. And to even move at all, I had to drag myself on my elbows across the floor, and uh, ended up, um, between things got mishandled from the get go.
Mhm.
Even when a friend took me to the doctor who did an X-ray, and he's like, "No, you need an MRI. Let's get a ambulance to take you." And put a note that I should have an MRI, but there had been a car accident, so I was waiting at the hospital for a while, and then they never even did that. They just did a physical examination, and
That sucks.
they thought it was one thing, and they only got around to an MRI like a month later. It was misdiagnosed at the time.
Oh,
Uh, I
no.
think we originally thought it was femoral neuropathy. Later found out it was actually um, at the I think it was forget if it's L3 joint on the right side. There was actual nerve damage in my spine. And for 5 weeks, I couldn't even roll over on my own. And
Oh my gosh.
that was bad. But the more problematic part is that's manageable if you know, okay, in 5 weeks, this will be over. But I had just spent a half a year in Brazil working on this dance form I love and really starting to build like, okay, this is also part of my identity.
Yeah.
And so then not being able to move, not knowing if I was going to ever walk again, let alone dance, it was, you know, am I the same Jonathan? Do I even have the same value as a human being if I can't do any of the things that I really sort of considered definitional of who I was?
And what can I
And
do if I can't
so,
even move? It's hard to
yep.
see a path forward when
Uh,
you're so uncertain, I'm sure.
yeah. And it was, in retrospect, stupid. Like, I should have taken temporary medical leave from the university. What I did was got permission to move the classes online, and in like a couple of hours a
Of
day
course
would
you
prop my
did.
laptop on my chest while I'm lying on my back in bed and try and run a class.
How'd that go?
And, I didn't want to make so I had 2 classes at the time. One was on culture and medicine, and I thought what I was dealing with was pertinent. So I shared with the class, "Look, this is what's going on." The other class had nothing to do with it, so I didn't. And that also came back to bite me in the ass because then when I got the evaluations for the class that semester, one student wrote like, "How do you take a class seriously when the professor can't be bothered to show up?" Um,
Shit.
so that was also part of, I mean, but they didn't know, and they didn't know, I
Yeah.
mean, I thought I had explained that it was medical, but they don't know. But it's like, if that's but those evaluations, rather than the university going, "Okay, wait, we're not gonna count that," like, that's still part of what I'm evaluated on, just reassured me that I had made the right decision to start pivoting away.
Yeah, no shit. So, you eventually got the right diagnosis and then you were able to get good treatment or what?
Yeah, so that's interesting. If I'd had the right diagnosis from the beginning, it could have been a much faster and less painful process because I would have known what to do and where I could get an injection.
Sure.
Given that it took over a month to even get the MRI and then another couple of weeks to get the actual, results, nerves, if they're not severed, will begin to reconnect and regrow. So I was already making some progress by the time we got the diagnosis. If anyone has ever dealt with nerve pain, it's unlike anything else. Even the medications that help, gabapentin, they mute it. They never make it go away, and they also make you really groggy.
Mm.
And between being on my back, and then when I could finally move a little, like, even getting up, and then this groggy, like, it would knock me out. I had so much gabapentin that I was having trouble, like, seeing a single image and not double images,
Mhm.
uh, and I was finally back to starting to be able to walk unassisted again when the pandemic hit, so that also took me out of dancing for multiple years. But as far as the treatment, you know, anyone who's not dealt with nerve pain, I hope you never do. Like, I don't wish that on anyone,
Yeah.
um, or very, very, very few people, shall we say. Um, and at the same time, in retrospect, I wouldn't give back the experience because even though I thought, and I think at an intellectual level, I was already aware of the difference between doing and being,
Yeah.
that experience really was a crucible that made me face it. If I can't do all the things that were sort of how I defined myself, then am I the same me, as I said? And do I have the same worth, even if I'm a different version?
Mhm.
And that's really what helped me identify that it's being that matters and that, shifted my thinking. Um, it, Other people have said it, this isn't mine, but like the focus on we're human beings, not human doings, and that's worth taking seriously. As I continued to train and then build my coaching business, I use being as the acronym to guide it because I think that's so
Ooh, I
important.
like that.
And um, yeah, if you're interested, I can go through what the acronym even stands for, but it's not super important, and anyone can track it down on my website if they're interested too. Uh, and really, at the underlying all of it, it's the shift from focusing on what to how.
Mhm. What did that look like?
It depends because it depends on the actual circumstance. So again, it's those old adages of, life is how you make it. And again, that's total BS. So much of life is beyond our control. So
Right.
much of it happens. And so, okay, 10% is how you make it, but 90% is how you take it. It's how do you approach the things that happen? How do you choose to respond? How do you choose to show up? How do you choose to deal with things that do happen? There are absolute tragedies that happen every day to people around the world, uh, you know, whether it's large scale things
Mhm.
that are happening right now, or whether it's at a personal level, a familial level. And those are beyond our control. We don't make those circumstances, but how do we respond? And that is something we always have some choice in. And it's not there's a right version, and it's not that any of us are perfect.
Right.
I'm certainly not, but I can be deliberate. I can be intentional. And so I think this really, the epitome of it for me was in January of 2020. I was starting to be able to like sit up in a chair a bit again. And I was involved in a long term relationship at the time. And at the time, it had been the most um, fulfilling romantic relationship of my life. And it was long distance. She lived in California, and she ended up breaking up with me. And again, we just weren't compatible in certain ways.
Sure.
And amazing woman. I have nothing bad to say about her whatsoever. To the contrary, but it caught me by surprise. And some of that's on me. Like I was busy with just recovering from the injury and still trying to be academically productive.
Mm.
But I remember I was sitting in the chair at the foot of my bed, and, there were tears streaming down my face. And she's like, do you want to just talk, check in next week? Or I'm like, no, 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 give me a second. And I realized I was never going to have that moment over.
Mm.
And that, we've all had the experience of whether it's 2 hours, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years later going, "Crap, I wish I'd said something different. Crap, I wish I'd done something different."
Yeah.
And I don't know where it came from, but in that moment, I'm like, looking back on this, how will I have wanted to respond?
Ooh, yeah.
And So what I said to her was, I want to thank you for all of the shared experiences, which were amazing, and for all of, the support and growth and development, and most of all, just for being you. And, I was devastated, but I have zero regrets. And I've come to call that future casting. So when we're in the weeds, what's the future me going to have wished I did in this moment? And
Mhm.
use that as a compass and as a north.
I like that a lot. I also like to ask, how do I wanna feel when this is over? Because we can get really
Hmm.
wrapped up in the messy middle, like, we know this pain is gonna pass, but how we get to the other side, you got a couple choices. You can do it real crazy, or you can be like, "If I wanna feel not batshit crazy, by the time this is over, I'm gonna have to not act batshit crazy in the middle," you know? Because that's what I had to learn is, like, there's always the other side, always. It always comes, and I spent so much of my life trying to control every piece of the outcome, and it was like the outcome wasn't gonna change that much either way, but if I could just control myself, I could get to the outcome a lot smoother. So I like that. So, okay, I do wanna know about your acronym, being. And then
Yep.
also, so tell us, a little bit about what you do about this being, and then we'll, how we can find you, things like that.
Sure. So again, to me, it's this how we're being in the world
Mhm.
that matters the most. And so I now work as a transformational life coach, other than going to be running a dance studio, as I said.
Yeah.
And I primarily work with people who, again, it's a similar trajectory to what I lived. By external measures, you've built the life that you thought you wanted or thought you were supposed to, and then realize it's not quite as meaningful or fulfilling
Mhm.
as you thought it was going to be, and want to figure out what's the life that you really want and how to get there. And so B is begin where you are,
Mm.
because if you think about the GPS in your car or your phone, it needs a signal. It can't navigate until it really understands
Has to
where
know
you
where it's
are.
starting to know
And
where it's going.
exactly. And I think all too often when we realize we want change, we're so busy going that if we don't actually know where we're starting from, you can spend so much energy and find out you went in the wrong direction.
You can spin your wheels. Yeah, absolutely. You're so right.
Yep. So that's the B.
Begin
E
where
is
you are.
explore where you want to go,
Mm.
because there is no one correct destination. So there's nothing wrong with wanting, a promotion at work or a raise. But what's behind that? Is it just that you think that's what you're supposed to want? And if you dig under it, sometimes people are like, okay, well, then I'm going to have more resources. Well, why are those important? Well, then I can, take care of my family and spend more time with them. Well, why is that important? Well, they're the most important thing to me. Okay, well, how much time are you going to have with them if you take on this added responsibility?
Mhm.
Um, Maybe it is worth the trade off. I'm not saying it isn't, but
Right.
until you really explore what are the actual things involved versus what are the things you're doing because you think you're supposed to, it's very tricky. The I is investigate how you're going to travel between here and there because there's never one route.
Mhm.
So, and I also do a second piece of that because one of the things is I also ask people to investigate how have you made the decisions in your life that have worked best in like looking back.
Yeah.
Because for some people, it's pros and cons. For some people, it's a gut feeling. For some people, it's checking in with people who know them well.
Mhm.
And there is no one way to do this. But like looking back on your life, what are the like pivot points where things have come out the best for you? And what are the things where they've come out sort of the way you wish most had been different? And how did you make decisions in each one? And let's apply that to right now. And is it the direct route? Is it the scenic route? Is it the one that lets you stop and see certain things along the way? Like, what's really the way that makes sense for you to travel between where you are and where you want to be.
Yeah.
The N is now start because it's way too easy to that paralysis by analysis. Like, I want to get it
Mhm.
just right.
Mhm.
And if you understand why you made the decisions in the B, the E, and the I, if I'm coming home from work, there can be detours. There can be a detour because there's road construction. It could be, you know what? I don't want to go half an hour out of my way for this errand. But if I don't do that, then it's going to be 2 hours out of my way for a separate trip another day.
Mhm.
And so those things happen. But that doesn't mean we're lost if we've really done the work on the B, the E, and the I, because we know where we're starting, we know where we're going, and we know why we're going the way we're going. And so there's no reason not to start.
Yes.
And then the G is grow into you, because now that we've figured out which version of you is really yours, how do we actually take stock of the ideas, the concepts, the values that we've identified and the life you want, and really embrace that and understand that we know the process and we can apply it to anything in our lives.
Mhm.
You know, it's iterative. There's cycles. It's not a one and done. It's not you've arrived. It's
Right.
you're now at another level of being you.
Yes. Oh, I like that. That's great. That's a great, like, what do you call that? Route. Like, that's a great place to start. So
Thank you.
where can people find you?
Yeah. So this probably won't come as a surprise to anyone at this point if they've been listening, but to me, how we all get to where we are in our lives right now are the steps along the way, and how we really live the lives we want is to be very deliberate about those steps. So my website is stepsalongtheway.global.
Oh, I like that. That's
So,
easy.
yep, stepsalongtheway.global, and on the website you can both there's a link to download a free self-coaching mini workbook.
Mhm.
And there's also a link to just schedule a 30-minute next steps chat with me. Not a sales call, no cost, complimentary, and just, see if we can put one next step in line for you. And there's also some blog articles that'll be there. And yeah, just more about me and the approach. And if it makes sense and it's resonant for us to possibly work together, I'm happy to support anyone I can. And that's where you can get all the information.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much. I'm so excited we got to connect.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you, Melissa.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna press stop if you'll hang out for a sec. Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share.